Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I'm back tonight with another controversial mech review. Stacking up the clans against the Inner Sphere. I know you all love it and hate it at the same time, so I'm doing it. I decided I wanted to do the Hellbringer, another iconic clan design, also known as the Loki, 65 tons of awesome. And I wanted to stack that up against a comparable Inner Sphere mech. So I decided to go with the Caesar. They're actually within, I believe, 14 battle value of each other. So we're going to look at the Hellbringer B tonight. I looked at the loadouts, looked at the battle values. This one fit the bill for me. Has a very nice, diverse loadout, LBX-5. It's got that nasty, nasty Gauss rifle, and it has two Artemis-equipped SRM-6s. So it has, in my opinion, just looking at it on paper, just a very nice spread of weaponry. And of course, it's got that crazy 5.8 clan speed on almost all those giant mechs. So very good mech all around. The Caesar, on the other hand, very new. Just rolled out around the clan invasion, built on all new technology, also has a Gauss rifle, has an ERPPCs, medium pulse lasers for days. It's going to be a good matchup. The Caesar's a little slower, but we'll see. Guys, we're going to run them both through Battletech, and we're going to see which one comes out on top. Will it be the clans? Will it be the Inner Sphere? Stick around and find out. All right, guys, here we are. Caesar, Hellbringer, controversial clan versus Inner Sphere. We're going to start with the Caesar. So the Caesar is a 70-ton Inner Sphere battle mech with a battle value of 1,578. This is a 3050 design, actually produced in 3049. Fun story. This was actually a reverse-engineered cataphract. And the whole thing, the whole Caesar project was basically a distraction. So the Federated Commonwealth wanted to distract the public while they built the Axeman. I don't know. Seems like a very expensive distraction. But the Caesar allegedly turned out to be, an okay battle mech, which I think is an understatement. And so, they kept with it. But here it is, the Caesar. And it basically, according to master unit lists, you don't really see it into the 3100s, but there's no sort of notes on its extinction, so I assume it's still out there. Seems like a pretty good design. As far as movement goes, so it's a 4.6, no jump capability. It has a dissipation factor of 32. That's 16 double heat sinks. Very good. It does have an XL fusion engine, which I've mentioned this in the last couple battle reports, and I am not a fan. But armor mass, 10.5 tons. It's not terrible for a 70-ton mech. I would like to see more, but it's at that 77.4% mark, so not too bad. If you look at the armor distribution in the middle, it's really lacking on the side torsos, which scares me a bit. And the legs are a little bit low as well, but the arms, where the big guns are, those are well protected. All right, so let's talk about the guns. So right arm, ERPPC, right torso, Gauss rifle. Slayers right there. I mean, that's 25 points of damage coming in hot. The only thing that bothers me, again, about the design is they're both in that right side. You lose the right torso, I mean, you're dead, first of all, but you've also lost a majority of your weapons. That Gauss rifle doing a substantial amount of damage. Remember, with Gauss, the ammo doesn't explode. The weapon explodes. And there's like 7 criticals, I believe. I'd have to go back to the sheet. I think it's 7 for a standard Inner Sphere Gauss rifle. So if any one of those gets hit, you're pretty much toast, right? It sucks. It is cased to contain the explosion of the Gauss rifle, but it's not going to matter, again, with that XL engine. So already I'm getting nervous for the Caesar here. But those two main guns are backed up with 4 medium pulse lasers, left arm, right arm, 2 in the rear torsos in each side, and that's about that. So let's take a look at the Hellbringer. The Hellbringer, Alt Config B. I remember playing this thing in MechWarrior 2, like running around with the very stiff, goofy arms. This thing also called the Loki. And apparently it's called the Loki because when the Inner Sphere first encountered it, I believe it was Jade Falcon. I read this on Sarna. Great resource, by the way. The AFFC commander was basically like, WTF, these variants, all these different configurations are madness, therefore I'm going to call it Loki. I thought that was pretty cool. So anyway, a little history lesson for you. This thing's got a battle value of 1592, very close to that Caesar. It debuted in 2926, obviously built by Clan Hell's Horses. I feel like they build everything. It's got really great speed for a 65-ton mech, 5'8", no jump capability, really good dissipation, 13 double heat sinks for a total of 26 points. It does have an XL fusion engine. Still not my favorite, but on the Clan side, right, they've only got 2 criticals in the side torso for an XL fusion engine, which is an incredible boon because you can lose half your mech and still be running around like a lunatic. You know, by force withdrawal rules, you've got to back off the field, but otherwise, you know, you're basically hanging around. So armor mass, 8 tons. It's only 60.7% armor coverage. Is this going to be Loki's Achilles heel? I'm blending pantheons here, but anyway, let's see. We'll find out when we get down the defensive sim. But if you look at this thing, one thing that jumped out at me: the Loki has no lower arm actuators. I thought that was weird. So even though it's kind of got, you know, those what appear to be lower arm actuators, it doesn't. It's like a rifleman or a, you know, Raven or something like that, where it's just guns. And the armor coverage is abysmal. We talked about this. Armament is in fact madness. Gauss rifle, LBX-5, 2 Artemis-equipped SRM-6s, and then, you know, an ER small laser for good measure for, you know, anti-infantry, I guess. Ammo-wise, you've got Gauss ammo in the right arm, but remember, Clan units, case everywhere. Everything is auto-cased. The LBX ammo is in the left arm, SRM ammo is in the right torso, and then it's got dual Artemis fire control systems in that right torso as well. Remember, if you hit the Artemis system, it knocks it out of commission, so that's an important note there. But I'm excited to dive into the offensive simulation. I have no idea, I had no idea when I ran this what this Loki was going to look like, or the Caesar as well. I mean, I think you could guess what the Caesar is going to look like, but this thing has got all sorts of crazy weapons. So let's dive in and check it out. I feel like this is the 3rd or 4th mech review in a row where mechs just don't overheat. It's like, I don't understand. Why is heat in the game? You know, these mechs don't jump. So the only way you're building up heat is if you're alpha striking and you have like engine hits and you're building up, you know, native engine heat from the engine hit. But otherwise, you just can't build up any heat. They have too many damn heat sinks. Which is bizarre to me, especially, I mean, so for the Hellbringer, maybe it's, you know, locked configuration, you know, components, but for the Caesar, I don't know, this stuff makes no sense to me. But here we are. Let's look at damage. Well, the first thing we're going to see here is that the Caesar just flat out outperforms the Hellbringer at close range. Once you get those medium pulse lasers into play, the Caesar's doing really good. So it's interesting to see. It's almost, I mean, it's a substantial difference. 219.8 on the Caesar, 174.8 on the Hellbringer. The Hellbringer is just as good as we looked at the Thug and Victor. The last time we did this, we looked at those 2 80-tonners. The Hellbringer does more damage than both of them. Or maybe as much as the Thug. I think it's a little bit more. The Caesar does more than both of them by a large margin, all 3 of them for that matter. So very interesting to see, but the Caesar very effective once you get in close. Okay, so before we wrap up on the offensive benchmarks, I want to come back to something. So you notice, and you might be wondering, why does the damage tank for the Loki, for the Hellbringer, right when you hit turn 8? Well, turn 9, you're out of Gauss rifle ammo. So between turn 8 and turn 9, you are basically losing that weapon. So the Loki is only equipped with 8 rounds of Gauss ammo. That's a huge Achilles heel for this mech. And, you know, imagine if you would have stripped off maybe a little bit of ammo here or there for the SRMs, for example. I mean, you got 30 rounds there and put it into Gauss ammo. You would see a much, much bigger improvement here. So that's an important point here that I wanted to just circle back to before we check out the lethality. So let's get into lethality and let's see what that looks like. Okay, so the Caesar, looking very good. It is outpacing the Hellbringer all the way until the end. The Hellbringer makes a valiant comeback and gets within basically 5% of the Caesar in terms of percent kills. The Caesar almost hits 100% kills. It is brutal. 82% just CT and head kills. I'm sorry, 82% CT kills, 16.7% head kills. It's got two massive guns, the ERPPC, the Clan Gauss, lots of insta-kill decapitation potential there. The Hellbringer, on the other hand, a little bit more spread out. Still getting some head kills at 9.3%, but you'll notice a lot of engine kills on this Javelin. Why is that? Well, it's got a pair of Artemis SRM-6s. So those things lock, and they're just spraying missiles anywhere. You're generating a ton of crits with this mech, 4.9 critical hits per game, where the damage per hit is only 4.5. You know, going over to the Caesar on the left, you can see the damage per hit all the way up at 11, but the critical's at 2.9. So an interesting sort of distinction there. The Caesar faster to kill at 7.6 to the Hellbringer's 8.8. So right now, as far as offensive capabilities go, the Caesar does look like it is, winning this shootout here. Is it true? Are all Inner Sphere mechs better than Clan mechs? It's going to be the headline. We'll find out. Let's get through the defensive, the mobility. It's a big factor here, so stay tuned. It's getting exciting. So survivability, the Hellbringer looking way better than the Caesar. Now the Caesar does have a couple more tons of armor, but again, that XL engine on the Inner Sphere sucks. Let's take a look. So let's look at the death analysis. Now again, this is a new visualization as of a little bit ago, and I think you can really capture what's happening now. So that pink area represents engine kills. It's the same color key as the lethality pie chart, right? So, the pink is engine, the purple is ammo, the red is a CT or a head kill. So the Caesar's only getting cored out and legitimately killed 8.8% of the time. 52.2% of the simulations, it died from engine death. That's awful. It's awful. I don't know what to tell you. That is bad design. They were focusing too much on the Axeman. They should have put more armor on this mech. Again, arms very well armored. Legs, side torsos, just not doing it for me. The Hellbringer, even though it has 60.7% armor coverage, is surviving 68.2% of the time. Why is that? Well, it's got a freaking +3 target mod. It's a huge difference. It's only a difference of 1, but when you're looking at the 2d6 probability curve, I've talked about it before, it just exponentially gets more difficult with each number. So it is interesting to see here. So the Hellbringer, despite having more onboard ammo, again, the XL engine on the Clan, much better. You can survive a total side torso destruction and keep fighting. You're never going to die from an ammo explosion. So, it's basically pretty interesting to see here how this all shakes out. So now let's head over and check out on the mobility. Okay, so on to the mobility analysis. I think this is going to be a differentiator for the Loki/Hellbringer. So you see the Caesar starts out with a +2, the Hellbringer with a +3. Now, the Caesar basically degrades all the way down to a 1. It sees about 0.38 motive hits per game. It means every 3 games you're going to see, a motive hit, some sort of actuator hit in the leg, possibly a hip. The Hellbringer goes down to a 2.2. Now it has a much higher chance of a motive hit, but the overall sustained loss is much less. So neither mech here, which is interesting, packs out the critical slots in the legs. They're both 4 of 6, which is always a big thing. And statistically, it makes a huge difference to being able to maintain speed. So overall, the Loki is going to see more motive hits, but it's still maintaining a much higher modifier, even at its worst state. So only losing 0.8 to its target mod on average, the Caesar losing a whole point. Okay, so now this is a big one. This is efficiency. The Hellbringer's survivability is probably going to offset that loss of the Gauss power when it runs out of ammo. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out. So let's look at the purple area. That is the effective ACD, the dark area being the Hellbringer, the light area being the Caesar. Now you can see they're much more aligned than they were in just the raw offensive benchmark. It's because, again, this is factoring in that survivability. The Caesar tanks early. The Hellbringer's able to maintain and stay at a higher survivability rate overall. So this has a huge impact, again, on the net effectiveness of these mechs. When we look at damage loss, the Loki is only losing 9.6% of its overall damage. That's big. The Caesar, on the other hand, is losing 27.1% of its damage. So what does that mean? Well, if you remember, on the offensive benchmark, the Caesar was at 219.8, the Loki was at 174.8. Well, now it's much closer. Now the Caesar's at 160.3, the Hellbringer 157.9. So the Caesar just under 3 points ahead of the Hellbringer now. This is interesting. So the Caesar does have a slightly lower battle value. We'll see where it shakes out. Let's take a look at the efficiency ratings. Very, very close. The Hellbringer at a 7.09, the Caesar at a 7.25. Both of these on the right side of that bell curve. Both very, very strong performers. A 7 is an excellent buy, excellent bang for your buck. Both of these mechs look like they are not going to let you down in a fight. Let's take a look at gunnery sensitivity. The Hellbringer, which I think is good considering it's a clan mech, much better. It's actually way more responsive to better pilots. In fact, the Hellbringer sucks with lower gunnery. So at gunnery 4, the Caesar is much more of an efficient mech. Why? Well, it's got a bunch of pulse lasers. Even in the two in the back, which really they're not factored into this analysis actually at all. Only into the threat, which we'll look at in a moment. But, you know, even factoring those out, the Caesar much more effective at a lower skill, which is probably better considering it's an inner sphere mech. At gunnery 1, that's when you see the Loki start to jump ahead a little bit. All right, and just barely. They're about tied at gunnery 1. At gunnery 0, the Loki is now the better buy, the better bang for buck at 8.21, where the Caesar's at an 8.04. So kind of interesting to see these lines crisscross and how the, you know, better gunnery skill is going to make that Loki, that Hellbringer be more attractive than the Caesar. All right, so we'll start with the Caesar. Let's take a look at the threat envelope first. That's the hexagon on the bottom. It shows the firing arcs, and you can see that Caesar does have those rear-mounted medium pulse lasers. It doesn't do it for me. I'd strip them off and do something more useful. A 6-inch range shooting out your butthole, it's not that great, folks. The Gauss rifle, the PPC, that side is absolutely loaded to the gills. And so, you know, you can definitely get much stronger fire on the right side than you can on the left. But again, overall, that torso-mounted weapon really hits hard in the front. So, you know, the Caesar's not bad in terms of firing arc. Back up to the top, the threat by range, very strong performer. This thing has a nasty alpha strike. Its peak alpha strike is 37 points of damage. And that is at 6 inches. That's when those pulse lasers come into play. So subtract out the damage, it's still doing a fairly decent amount, 25 from the PPC and the Gauss rifle, all the way from 21 inches and beyond, really. But as soon as this analysis starts, it's able to just crush it. So as you get closer, obviously that white bar, that zero heat ACD, begins to creep up closer and closer to your alpha strike potential as the modifiers become more favorable. 7 inches, things look really good. And then those pulse lasers get into play. And then once you get into 3 inches, I think 3 and 2 inches really are your optimal ranges there for this particular mech. Okay, so as far as rolls go for this mech, let's take a look here. three things that come to mind. The first one is a brawler. Now, it's not a tough mech in terms of survivability, so you absolutely need to surround it with other juicy, meaty targets, like a hunchback. Everybody loves shooting at the hunchback. They're like, oh, 50-tonner with an AC-20, got to kill it first. Poor hunchback. Throw a couple things like that, even like a king crab, right? You don't want that thing getting close. So if you put this in a lance with other meaty targets, it will pay dividends. It can perform well at close range. And so I think that the Caesar as a brawler is a very, very viable play. And in an urban scenario, those medium pulse lasers that I was just making fun of, shooting out the back there, those could become very, very useful, right? So the second role here is a frontline mech. Not ideal, but it works. Better yet, this mech should be in a second line role. So you can play it in a frontline role if you want. I would not play it in a frontline role unless you're, basically leading a bunch of medium mechs and you don't have a lot of high damage potential on the other side. Otherwise, keep it in the back. It can hang out with your catapult. You can blow some stuff up at 20 inches or 20 hexes, and then you can close in and clean up the trash with the pulse lasers. But again, this thing, if I'm not mistaken and my memory isn't failing me, yes, it's got 16 rounds of Gauss ammo. You can float this thing out in the field for a very long time and be very effective with it. And if things do decide to get close, you can bring those pulse lasers to bear. So I think, for me, brawler and second line are how I would play this mech. Absent lance mates that are effective, second line is the way to go. But if you can build a good lance around it, front line, brawler, I think this mech will do well there. Again, good efficiency, good bang for buck, definitely a mech I would consider taking, and have done so in the past, although in Alpha Strike, and really enjoyed it. Let's take a look at the Hellbringer Alt Config B and see how that one shakes out. So really not all that different, just a little bit of a bigger Alpha Strike at close range, courtesy of just, again, that mad weapon configuration, those dual SRM 6s with Artemis, very lethal. So on the threat envelope here for the Hellbringer B, one important thing I wanna just go back to here is 360-degree arc of fire with a Gauss rifle and the LBX-5. So weird. The thing does not have lower arm actuators. I mean, it looks like it has them, right? But it doesn't. They're not on the record sheet. So that means that this thing can arm flip, fire the Gauss rifle, fire the LBX-5. That's a pretty substantial tactical advantage. Definitely worth looking at. So let's look at some key statistics here on threat. The Hellbringer's peak average calculated damage is at 3 inches. It's 35 points of damage. That means that if you Alpha Strike at 3 inches, assuming you're skill 2, right, gunnery score of 2, you're gonna on average do 35 points of damage. I mean, that is like armor shredding deliciousness. If you have gotten some holes in the armor and you've got a few exposed internal sections and you blast forth dual Artemis SRM 6s, it's just going to be crits galore. So very cool design in that regard. Pair this mech up with something, like a Warhawk if you really want to be a jerk. Something that can just punch holes in armor, and this thing can help out with the Gauss and close in and just, generate a ton of crits. Speaking of which, rolls for this mech, brawler, yes please. It does really well. Cavalry, it's fast. I mean, 8-inch, 8-hex move at a run. It can get across the table very quickly. You can get up in your opponent's face, and you've got a whole lot of weaponry. And don't forget about that small laser. It's worth its weight. This thing never builds up heat. You might as well just hold down the Alpha Strike button. So I think it can be very effective in that cavalry role. And then frontline as well. So similarly to the Caesar, this isn't probably the first place I would put this mech. But if it's sort of the big dog in the lance, it can play that role. Obviously, with its speed, as long as you keep the speed up, it will maintain some degree of survivability. The Caesar, on the other hand, just dies regardless because of that XL engine. The Loki, the Hellbringer, very dependent on speed to keep those defensive numbers up and thus keep its overall effectiveness up. you have to get this mech close to do some damage. So this is, in my opinion, an infighter true and true. Don't let the long-range LBX and Gauss rifle fool you. You know, use that to cover as you get in close, and then just shred stuff with this thing. Both of these mechs very cool. Love the Loki. I'll be honest, the primary config just doesn't do it for me. When I get mine through the Kickstarter, absolutely going to play this B config. Very excited about it. And honestly, fairly priced. When we looked at the Thor, it was like 2,200 BV or something, I believe, 2,300 maybe even. You know, this thing's 1,600 points. I'm willing to spend that for a 65-ton, 70-ton heavy mech, right? So both of these mechs, again, very good, very efficient. Love them both. The Caesar is not in the Kickstarter. I do own one. Got it a very long time ago. It is, you know, it's a Raul Partha sculpt, but of course Ironwind Metals has it as well. And so the place to get it, guys, where do you think? Aries Games and Minis. Just reach out to Derek. He's a great guy. You can go on his website, order it directly. Best prices around, best service around. I guarantee that for you. And then the Hellbringer too. There's a tons of different sculpts of the Hellbringer, I believe, that are out there. There's at least 2, I think, plus the upcoming Kickstarter one. Aries has those in stock for you. So, guys, that wraps up this Inner Sphere Clan Comparo, or does it? Did I pick a winner? I didn't. I don't know. You pick a winner. Tell me in the comments which mech you would rather have. I gotta be honest, guys, even though the Hellbringer is a little bit less efficient, and even though I love the Inner Sphere, I think I'm gonna pick the Hellbringer. That survivability is worth its weight. I think the Caesar is too volatile for me. I don't want to roll those dice. You know, if I have basically a 4 in 10 chance of surviving, that's not very good. The Hellbringer much better. I would, you know, you can protect it better. You know, the Caesar is just subject to, imagine that 1 through armor crit that hits the ammo bin, your mech is done. It's not good. It's not a good investment. So I'm going to pick the Hellbringer. Officially, it's done. It's in stone. So there you have it. Now it's over. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but I would be interested to know which battle mech you would pick and why. So don't forget to leave it in the comments. Find us on Facebook and leave a comment there. You can leave it in Discord, wherever you like. And of course, don't forget to check out our website, www.dfawargaming.com. These and a lot of other battle mechs available for your statistical viewing on Battlytics.com. Don't forget to check out our soundtrack, War Games by Death from Above Wargaming, on Amazon Music, iTunes, Spotify, all the major streaming services. It's there for you to listen to. Pretty good stuff. So that said, guys, I'm wrapped up. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a great night.